suspected of being subversives. The Home Secretary, Jack Straw, said he didn't know if a file opened on him had been destroyed or not. Our defence correspondent Kevin Dunn reports.
The Home Secretary demonstrating how to spy on the spies online at MI5's own website, where the security service will assure you that no, it does not spy on the royal family or politicians, and nor, according to its glossy brochure, does it kill people or arrange assassinations. Conspiracy theorists, please note. But its secret files will stay secret, even if you're the Home Secretary with a past as a firebrand student leader.
Talking of individuals, have you seen your file?
I've not seen my file.
Do you want to see it?
No, and I don't believe that I should have any more rights just because I'm Home Secretary than applies to any other citizen.
What MI5 has disclosed is the exact number of files it holds, a staggering 440,000 of them. The criteria for having one includes being a member of any organisation open to infiltration by subversive groups, being a member of foreign intelligence, or of a terrorist group. Among those thought to be on file are miners' leader Arthur Scargill, the late musician John Lennon, and the activist Derek Hatton. He's certain his militancy in the 80s earned him MI5's attention.
Anyone who was involved at the level that we were in the 80s would be unbelievably naive if they thought that those little clicks on the phones, those cars that kept appearing exactly the same make and exactly the same number plate in certain places, were not something to do with the fact that people were being watched.
So while you can browse through its brochure or even surf your way onto its website, the real MI5 is almost certain to remain as impenetrable as ever. Kevin Dunn, News at 10, outside MI5 headquarters.
The number of people losing their homes because they can't pay their mortgages is climbing again. According to figures from the Council of Mortgage Lenders today, there were more than 17,000 repossessions in the first 6 months of this year. That's nearly 10% up on the figure for the preceding 6 months. Here's ITN's Caroline Kerr.
This house is for sale, having been recently repossessed. In the first half of this year, an average of almost 100 householders every day lost their homes through repossessions.
For each family, it's a personal tragedy. This woman and her teenage daughter don't want to be identified. They're facing eviction after the woman fell behind with her mortgage payments following her husband's death.
It's awful. You just can't imagine what it's like. You don't know where you're going to go, you don't know what's going to happen to you. And it's your home, it's where you've lived, you know, and they're threatening you, they're going to take it from you.
Repossession figures are on the rise for the first time in 3 years. The housing charity Shelter blames high interest rates and job insecurity and says the trend is extremely worrying.
Today, since this morning, probably over 100 households will have lost their homes. So even though it's not as high as it was in the early 1990s, it is still at a totally unacceptable level. We must be worried about this.
Estate agents told us today they have noticed more repossessed properties on the market. But the Council of Mortgage Lenders say it's important not to exaggerate today's figures.
I think that the figures today shouldn't be seen as a precursor to going back to the figures of the early 1990s. We have lower interest rates, we have a more subdued housing market, we have house prices that are modestly increasing, so negative equity isn't a factor, and I think we have a better employment situation.
The current number of repossessions is still less than half the peak reached in 1992. But for those facing eviction, there's scant consolation in the statistics. Today's repossession figures further confirm the mounting evidence of a slowdown in the housing market. This is nothing like the slump of the early 1990s, but while interest rates remain high and there are fears about economic prospects, the slowdown looks likely to continue. Caroline Kerr, News at 10, West London.
Serb forces have continued their offensive against ethnic Albanians in the Yugoslav province of Kosovo. They say they've seized more Albanian strongholds. Today, NATO negotiators met with both sides of the conflict to try to persuade them to join peace talks. Rescuers searching for 10 Austrian miners trapped in a collapsed pit have heard noises tonight which may indicate that they're still alive. They were looking for a colleague when they themselves were buried by a landslide. The colleague was found safe. They have now been underground for 12 days. And a young British caver is recovering in hospital tonight after being rescued from a terrible accident in New Zealand. John Vale from Derby fell 30 feet onto a stalagmite, which pierced his back. He then had to wait for 6 hours until rescuers were able to reach him. Before the end of this week, the government's expected to announce a fundamental change in roads policy, axing or deferring up to half of the motorway and main road schemes planned for England. The proposal to widen a section of the M25 motorway west of London is, however, expected to get the go-ahead. So is the proposal to widen an almost equally congested section of the M6 north of Birmingham. But would it relieve the congestion or just generate even more traffic? Norman Rees has our special report.
Gavin Oakes' day begins early, very early. It's 6:10 and already he's on the road to his job as an apprentice at the Rover car plant in Longbridge. On a bad day, his trip down the M6 can take 2 hours.
It's about 46 miles from my house to the factory. And if I leave sort of 5 minutes later than normal at home, it can work out, you know, getting to work 15 minutes later. So an early start's vital.
And even this early, it's not long before Gavin is at a standstill.
This would be an everyday thing. This is where the M54 joins with the M6, and you'd be very lucky if you got past here without having to stop. All of these cars, their engines are running, but the cars aren't doing anything. They're just pumping fumes out, aren't they? And I'd say a lot of people here are getting quite stressed, and going into work in a stressful state's not a good way to start the day, is it?
The M6, just north of Birmingham, carries 165,000 vehicles a day.
Mike Alpha Oscar Tango 1 over.
At the police motorway centre, they measure M6 traffic jams in miles, delays in hours. Echoes of the M1 and M25, frustration for drivers.
Tempers do start to flare. We don't get major problems of road rage, but it's usually impatience. I'll change lanes, I'll overtake on the inside because I can gain 3 spaces.
Plans to ease these bottlenecks include widening 50 miles of the M6 to 8 lanes, linking with a controversial, privately funded new toll road north of Birmingham. Environmentalists claim that will just attract more traffic, more congestion.
Widening this road wouldn't ease people's journeys, precisely because more people would start to move out, more people would commute in. Unless we address the growth in traffic, unless we start to invest in public transport for the people who are here and encourage other people to stay living within the cities and working within the cities, congestion will grow however much money we throw at the M6.
That's not the way many motorists see it, when every lane of the M6 seems to be a slow lane.
If you look at the government's own predictions of congestion over the next 10 to 20 years, this part of the main artery through the UK is scheduled for a major coronary if something isn't done. And while we're very supportive of a fully integrated transport system, where improvements are needed for the road infrastructure, like this area of the M6, then it has to be guaranteed.
This stretch of the M6 has been described as the worst driving experience in Europe, and it's costing the government money, lots of it. Last month alone, more than 500,000 people were reckoned to have been stuck in traffic jams here, with a loss of 250,000 man-hours. Gavin Oakes' round journey to and from work today took 3 hours. He has no convenient alternative by bus or train. His dilemma is at the heart of a government roads review that must balance all these issues and address the transport needs of the next millennium. Norman Rees, News at 10, Birmingham.
Football, some Scottish viewers will be able to